In this video, I'm going to talk about the topicality spec argument. All right, so before we talk about this topicality argument, I want to talk about the history of it real fast. So let's talk about policy debate real fast. So in policy debate, there are these arguments called specs or specifications. And here is kind of the root of these arguments. So every policy resolution that has happened since I have been involved in debate starts with the United States federal government should ... So the United States federal government should provide a universal basic income. The United States federal government should provide public health assistance to sub-Saharan Africa. The United States federal government should substantially increase its economic engagement to Latin America. All of these arguments, all of these resolutions that we start with, all start with the United States federal government. So there was an argument that came along that said this entity, the United States federal government, is too vague. And this comes from the idea that in the United States, there are obviously three branches of government. And those three branches are the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. So there's an argument, a specific type of specification or spec argument called agent specification. A lot of times this is abbreviated as A-spec. So A-spec as an argument said an affirmative team should not say the United States federal government. Instead of saying the United States federal government, they should say it should be done by the executive, it should be done by the judicial, it should be done by the legislative. And that by picking one of these three things, it made it so that the negative had more ground in the debate. So if you chose a courts aff, they could read like the constitutional amendment counterplan, or they could read a court clog or an Hollow Hopes DA. For the legislative branch, they could read like a politics DA or a court's counterplan even, all sorts of things like that. So there were a lot of reasons why people thought that specifying your agent was a good idea. However, this, in the current state of the argument, is very much seen as like a silly, nobody is going to ever win a debate or go for this argument because it's not really strategic and it's not really utilized, and a lot of people just think it isn't something that's worth deciding a debate on. There's a lot of arguments that are like, hey, if you make us say executive, then you're going to make us say Department of Homeland Security or Department of Labor or Department of whatever falls under the executive, and that it will be this infinitely regressive process of you will always have to specify more, so it's silly. Another example or another reason is just like the resolution says the federal government, why do we have to specify anymore? There's a lot of other defensive arguments like, why didn't you ask us in cross-ex? We shouldn't have to do this. All sorts of things like that. So the reason that we are talking about this specific argument is that there is a topicality argument on our topic that applies to our affirmative. So against affirmatives that defend the entire topic or getting rid of all lethal autonomous weapons, there is an argument that follows in line with this specification argument that we just talked about called you must specify your lethal autonomous weapons. So this says in order to be topical, you must specify what specific weapon you ban, and that if you don't specify your specific weapon, you should lose the debate because that is a core part that allows us to get a lot of ground and a lot of argumentation in the debate. You'll see similar standards to what we had on topicality, like ground. If we don't specify, we can't get links to our DAs. We can't get counterplan ground. We can't get educated because it's vague. We don't know what autonomous needs. We need this type of clarity in order for us to actually debate the topic. So this is what the you must specify your lethal autonomous weapon argument should look like. This is probably the only topicality argument that people will read against us because we defend, as of right now, a affirmative that defends the entire resolution. So the only topicality argument that they could make is this: you must specify your specific weapons, right? Some obvious answers: we do specify, we ban all of them. All of the answers that I talked about for the A-spec argument would also apply. It's probably infinitely regressive. Do we have to specify the states? Do we have to specify how they're banned? There's a whole lot of reasons that's just like, this probably isn't something that's necessary, and that the negative probably has all of the ground that is necessary for them to have in the debate anyway.